Today we get to work on my brand new to me, 2017 Polaris Slingshot. This is one of the ones that's got the 2.4 GM Ecotech motor in it. I bought it about a week ago. It's only got 6,000 miles on it. Got it yesterday morning and it wouldn't start. Starter won't engage. See if I can show you what it's doing here. Turn the key on, wait for the fuel pump to power up, push in clutch and brake, push the start button, nothing happens. I know you can't hear it on the video, but I can hear the start relay in the fuse blocks clicking. So I know it's trying to put power to the starter. The starter's not doing anything. Apparently it's a common problem in these slingshots with the 2.4 for the starter solenoid that's mounted actually on the starter motor itself to fail quite often. So I get to change the starter on my slingshot. I looked around on the internet. I mean, it's a GM motor, it's pretty simple, but I did look around on YouTube just to see, how other people were doing it. Were they trying to get to it from underneath, or were they removing the intake manifold and trying to go from the top? I couldn't find too much out there, so I thought I'd show you how I'm going to do it here in the garage. Normally I would do this in my garage in the backyard. This happens to be in what I call my wife's garage. This is where she parks her cars. So all my tools and stuff I've had to put in a cardboard box and bring up here, but this is the way most people would do it anyway, either in a driveway or in a normal garage, not in a nice shop. So we're gonna do it old school today. I know some of y'all are already saying, well, what about the battery? The battery's dead. Have you checked the battery? Yes, I've checked the battery. The battery's got 12.8 volts in it, so it seems to be good. I even load tested the battery, although this is more like a motorcycle battery than it is a car battery. And to be honest, I don't know how many amps to look for on a motorcycle battery, but the battery seems to be just fine. So I'm fairly positive the starter is the issue. So of course the first step is to disconnect the battery so you don't short things out. So on these Polaris, it's in this compartment here underneath, kind of behind the driver. So you take out these two little clips here. Those little clips that always seem to break on you. So see if we can get those out without turning them up. You can do this with a screwdriver, but I do happen to have the proper tool, so I'm going to use it. Okay, so I got those two little clips out. I'll put the center back in on each one of them so I don't lose it. And then there's two Torx. Well, one of them's Torx, the other one, somebody's been in here before and changed the battery. It looks to have a different screw on it. I believe they're both supposed to be a Torx. This is a T40. So remove both of those bolts. You know what, I could use impact. I like power tools when I can use them. Makes life a lot faster. And the screw that is now in here now is like a Phillips / straight head, flat head. It's not even tight. So I'll get that out of the way. Looks like they've added a couple of washers underneath it too, so I'm guessing they lost the original screw and this just happened to be one they had that fit the hole. Doesn't matter, serves the job. Okay, so this should pop right out. There we go. Now, I apologize for the lighting. This shop does not have the lighting that my actual shop has, so I'm doing the best I can. So here's your battery. This is a lead that goes to your battery tender that hangs out there, and so I'm going to disconnect the negative side. Negative's on the outside here, positive's on the inside. Negative is easier to get to, so that's what I'm going to disconnect. Looks to be a 10 millimeter. It's one thing I hate about working out of a cardboard box. I can't find my tools. I'm used to things being organized on my bench, and I can find things in a heartbeat. First world problems, right? Okay, it was 10 millimeter. put the screw back in there so I don't lose the little nut that screws into. Okay, so battery's disconnected. So now we can go up front and actually start on the actual starter. Okay, up here in the engine compartment, here on the driver's side, the starter is actually located way down in there underneath where the oil filter housing is. And the easiest way to get to it is to remove this intake manifold, which looks kind of daunting, but I really don't think it's going to be all that bad. So I'm going to try to work around my tripod here, my camera, so that you can see. So we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to remove this intake boot to get it out of the way off the throttle body. Okay, then wiring has to be disconnected. I always leave something in the other shop. I've already made 5 trips over there grabbing things I thought I might need. Okay, I'm back. So much easier with the right tool. Factory zip tie. Okay, so this evac hose here needs to come loose without breaking it. It's always a challenge to try to figure out how this stuff comes loose without tearing stuff up. Sometimes I wish I had a pair of glasses to show you what I'm seeing so that I have both hands. Okay, so here's the tube we're trying to get loose. My lighting is terrible, I apologize. Trying to show you. It's got a little nub right here on the top. That little nub will push over and then the piece will just pop right up off of it. That little nub right there just pushes sideways. So simple. Okay, that's loose. Here's a wiring. Needs to come loose. How does that one work? Never fails. I always end up breaking the connector someplace. Trying to figure out how it works. Okay, it's got a little thumb thing there that you push and wiggle it and it comes off. One right here. Same thing. Okay, I don't see any more wiring or tubing that's connected to the manifold itself. Okay, now bolts. There's one bolt down in here that kind of holds the outside of the manifold. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts that bolt the manifold to the head that look to be 10 millimeter. So that should come off pretty easy. 10 millimeter wrench on the bolt that's down here on the outside. No bigger than this vehicle is, you'd think there'd be a little more space. Everything's crammed in beside the frame rails. Tubing. I can already tell it's kind of a dipstick mount. It's going to be hard. It's going to be fun to get that bolt back in there. All right, bolt. Okay, 10 millimeter on an extension. Be careful with these bolts because if you drop them, they may be difficult to get to. I always like to watch them too and make sure some of them could be different length than the other. So just to be safe, pay attention to where they come from, at least until you get them all out. And there's a stud right here, so it's a nut instead of a bolt. Be extra careful of the nuts, because if you lose those, you'll never find them. I just dropped one, but I see it. Got it. Another nut. Another bolt. One last bolt. The manifold should be loose. All the bolts are the same length, so no worries there. Remember, it's got 2 studs there. You have to work it off those studs and away from the dipstick. Now here. And careful of all your wiring. Well, frame seems to be in the way on this side. I'm going to take his throttle body off and give me some more space. Here's the extension. Personally, I like to put bolts back in by hand. I don't think a electric impact has a very good feel for small bolts like this, especially that go into plastic. And these bolts are made a little bit different than the ones for the manifold, so keep them separate. See if that gives us enough space. I could unhook that from the alternator right here, give me a little more room. There we go. All right, that gives you enough room to kind of wiggle it out of there, removing that throttle body. Here we go. Starter, you're right down in there. So you got to remove the 2 wires off of it first. You got the battery cable with another wire, and then the ignition wire is below that on a little terminal. There we go, the better lighting. So this terminal, how does it work? Looks like it flips up, but I don't see a thumb doohickey. Kind of pick it up with your thumb and then pull out. So that's your ignition wire that actually engages the starter. So then it's just one more wire there. The cable plus this yellow wire that goes to the alternator, or the green wire that goes to the alternator. I guess that's about a 13 millimeter, maybe. Okay, I got the battery cable off there. It was a 13 millimeter. I used a little socket and a ratchet. Now there's 2 mounting bolts. Those are 15 millimeter that mount the starter. So I'm gonna crack those loose, but I need 2 hands. Okay, the bottom bolt is a bit of a chore to get to. Had to use a short 15 millimeter socket with a universal joint, and then 2 extensions to kind of get my little ratchet up here to get to it. So kind of rare to get to, that bottom one. Motor mount stuff is kind of in the way. So I'm gonna get this out of here, and the starter should be free. Okay, there we go. Old one's out, and then we get ready to go back in. They are identical. I looked up a 2008 Pontiac Solstice with a 2.4 liter in order to get this part. I got this one from AutoZone for like $87 delivered. That's tax and everything, in 1-day shipping. I found them on DB Electrical for like $63. That's before tax, but they're not that expensive if you shop around. If you get one off the shelf, you'll pay $180, $190. So sometimes it pays to wait a day or 2 for some shipping, but let's put this one back in. Okay, it starts back in. It's hard to film down in there, so you get the idea. If you got this to this point, you knew what it took to get out of there. It's just the reverse of what you did. So now stick this manifold back in there. Try not to break anything. Keep stuff out of the way. If I can remember how it went, I think it went the other way. All in all, starter's not too terrible. I've had Hondas and Fords that were harder to do. Gamma. Okay, what's in the way? It's hard to work around camera. Okay, that's literally what it was. The camera was in the way. So we got it up on the studs now. Put those two nuts on. General rule for any kind of mechanics: start everything before you tighten anything. That way you're not bolt bound. So get everything started, but don't tighten anything down yet. And a lot of people will use the electric impactor in these in. Personally, I will not. So many things are plastic and aluminum these days. I like the feel of when it's tight and when it's too tight, if you know what I mean. Larger bolts, I don't have an issue with it. Smaller bolts, I prefer not to. That's just me. One word of caution on the battery cable terminal on the starter. If you're using electric ratchet or something like that, like a 3/8 ratchet, you do not want to use any kind of an impact on that terminal. I did a Honda here about a month ago, and I broke the terminal off the solenoid. It was in a spot where I just could not get to it any other way. There's literally no way to get to it with a ratchet or a wrench and be able to swing the wrench. So I used my ratchet, my air ratchet. And I did not hammer on it. I just ran it in until it touched. And it ripped the stud completely off of a brand new $400 starter. So don't do what I did. When you tighten this manifold, start in the center and kind of snug it down and work your way to the outside. Kind of in a clockwise pattern. And don't go crazy with it. It don't have to be super tight. This is plastic. Just kind of, I'm sure the torque's back on it. I don't know where it is. About that tight. Then the one stud out here on that dipstick tube, a bit of a pain to get to. I dropped it 3 times trying to get it in the hole because it's right beside the frame rail. Finally did get it in there. Now if I get a wrench on it to tighten it. And there's a cable there in the way also. Anybody remember which direction the throttle body was? Is it that way? Was it this way? Which direction was it? I should probably take better notes. Okay, about where it goes. I'm thinking it goes this way. Yep. Look at the pattern where the gasket touches the back of it. Gives you a clue. And going against what I just said, I'm using impact to just barely run them down nice and slow. Just till they touch. I'm not tightening them. Then I'll go back to the ratchet and get my final torque with my calibrated wrist. Yes, I should have crisscrossed there, but whatever. Okay, plug all my wires back in. Let's see, that came from here. One goes right there. There was one into the alternator. If you hold your mouth right, it'll pop right in. Okay, I don't think I left anything loose. Should be it, other than just the intake tube. With any luck, this solves my problem. Of course, I'll go hook the battery back up. Wish me luck. Clutch.